Mr. Sutherland, regarding the location of this conference, what do you think of the Netherlands and in particular The Hague?
I think the Netherlands is a perfect place for this conference. When I look at the history of the Netherlands, its association for many centuries with a type of openness, an openness to ideas and an openness to people. And when I marry that historic reality with some of the more recent events and turmoil, indeed, in the Netherlands, it seems to me that the willingness to debate and to discuss, which is part of the Dutch character, makes this place, makes this venue, The Hague, perfect.
The theme of this conference is justice and migration, paradoxes of belonging. What do you say? Is that important?
One of the great challenges of modern times has to be the integration of peoples. We're faced by challenges all over the world, challenges of an economic kind, challenges in terms of the relationships between peoples and cultures. These will not go away. Erecting border controls is not an answer to the issue of movement of people. We're dealing here with fundamental values and the application of fundamental values in our dealings with other people. And this is something which is one of the great challenges with issues like climate change and terrorism of our times. We have lived through a number of centuries where concepts of absolute sovereignty of states have gradually, fortunately, eroded to the extent that we recognize that we live in an interdependent world. It's not going away, and that interdependent world carries as one of its elements the issue of movement of people.
So you do think that everybody has the right to migrate from one country to the other country?
I think that the states maintain and have the right to maintain controls on the movement of people up to a point. I think that social cohesion in dealing with migration is necessary and desirable. And if you have totally unregulated migration, where people move totally freely without any requirement to have authority to do so, that it would cause a degree of chaos, which is not desirable. But in saying this, I'm not suggesting that it is desirable that you should have rigorous exclusion of migrants from societies. We have to reach a balance, and that balance has to be a constructive engagement with migration and an understanding that it is part and parcel of the world in which we live, and indeed, in my view, part and parcel of our obligations to our fellow man, recognizing the dignity of man and not defining people by their race.
Globalization suggests greater mobility, but on the other hand there's a rise of nationalist sentiments to curb cross-border movement. What does this paradox mean for the justification of international migration?
There seems to be an attempt to disconnect the concept of economic globalization with the advantages that free movement of goods and services brings to all of us. And the Netherlands is a prime example of a dependence on this process of globalization, or for that matter, European integration. And on the other hand, there is a tendency to see no parallels and no responsibilities in respect of movement of people. I don't accept that. We live in a world of free communications. It's no longer possible, if it ever was, to keep parts of the third world ignorant of the differences on standards of living that apply around the world. And this inevitably is going to lead to greater movement of people. And we have to learn how to accommodate to that in a constructive way, not in a totally unregulated way, but in a constructive way.
Do you think there should be an international memorandum of agreement on accepting or rejecting migrants?
I feel that whilst it might well be desirable that there should be an international regime which is in some way tabulated in an international legislation of one kind or another, the experience of the adoption, particularly, or non-adoption by the OECD countries of conventions that are already available for signature within the UN doesn't lead to great confidence that a global negotiation of a legal document is likely to be forthcoming. And if we're talking about a memorandum of understanding that has no legal effect, well then, unfortunately, we have found in the past that there's a great willingness to sign up to the rhetoric of good intention, which may not always translate into practical implementation.
What do you think? What should be in it, in such a memorandum?
I'm doubtful about the effort that should go into that. I'm much more concerned with practical relationships and development of relationships between peoples. And in particular, I see the European Union playing a role in this. They've considerable experience and they can considerably enhance the dialogue between the member states so that there can be a common European position in regard to this issue. We cannot simply allow the issue to become renationalized.
Finally, what message do you wish to give to the participants of this conference?
Well, first of all, I'm very grateful to you all for being here, being at this meeting, and signaling thereby an interest in constructive engagement. What we're looking for are ideas, we're looking for methodologies to develop a real dialogue which signals our recognition that we live in an interdependent world.